everyone. I'm Patricia Muir, and I am the president of Maestro Quality Inc. I'm also the founder of Thrive. The Thrive program interviews women, all women business owners, and today I'm speaking with a woman entrepreneur, a very special woman entrepreneur that I've known for a short time, but she has a great message for us, very topical at the moment. I'd like to introduce Kara Morgan of Planet Efficiency Solutions and validate her choices in her life and also give her a voice. Hello, Kara.
Hi, Patricia. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Tell us what your big why is around continuing to work, and let us know a little bit about Planet Efficiency Solutions.
So, Planet Efficiency Solutions began 7 years ago after leaving government work. In the executive office, I was supporting senior management, helping them with the operational side of the business, and this would have been like public sector, and doing a lot of project management work and seeing a lot of inefficiencies. And so I decided, because I was doing this work, but not necessarily getting recognized for the work that I was doing, that I would kind of go out on my own and do it. And coincidentally, at the same time, my second son was born. So it was good timing. I needed the flexibility. I needed the time to kind of gather myself and figure out what direction I wanted to go in. And through that, just throughout my whole work experience, I just noticed people were doing things that created a lot of waste, and doing things that took a lot of time, and using the wrong kind of programs or software for the wrong kind of tasks that they wanted to do. And that was the business that I went into. Started off as a virtual assistant and realized that was saturated. So I went into consulting. That was also saturated, but more directional. And then eventually really narrowed it down to focusing on holistic efficiency solutions. So our productivity is affected not just by, us taking a long time to do things, but our environment, where we work, how we work, who we work with. There are all these factors that come in, and I call that a system. And I really wanted to focus on systems. And the more you work on systems, the more you see systems all over you, like your digestive system, the banking system. Everything around us is a system, and it forms patterns. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just really focusing on how all these systems work together and how we work together within them.
Tell us about your current focus, especially on systems and how it relates to disarming racism. Tell us a little more about that.
So, as you know, with the current events, racism has kind of been a trending topic. But for those of us who live it every day, it's not a trend. This is our reality. This is our existence. We go through it every day. And sometimes it's very hidden, and sometimes it's very obvious. And sometimes you can see the intent of it, and sometimes it's not very obvious at all. And I think in Canada, that kind of, we get the reputation of being a nice country and accommodating, and Canada is that. But it's in comparison to the overt type of racism that you might see in the States. In Canada, it's very covert. So it's not the name calling or the violence or the outward actions. It's more institutional. It's more systemic. So that's where you get the term systemic racism from. It's all within a system. And because everybody's part of that system, people of color and white people, it doesn't look like anything until it impacts you personally. And if you're not a person of color, you probably wouldn't even notice, because it's just your everyday existence. Systems work on particular things, right? They're there for particular reasons. So if you're not a part of that, it's oblivious to you a lot of times, unless somebody points it out to you. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with focusing on racism, getting people to understand that it's not necessarily about individual actions. That's the result, yes, but the beginning of it, how it begins, is from the system itself. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You are part of the system. I'm part of the system. There's times when the topic becomes very topical, like it is now,
Yeah.
through the media, through what is going on with Black Lives Matter. And tell us a little bit about your experience as being a woman of color in business and
Hmm.
how this systemic racism has affected you,
Hmm.
and what inspires you when your doubts creep in
Hmm.
business.
So in business, again, it's nothing that would be obvious to someone. So someone says, "Well, I'm not going to work with you because you look this way or because you're from this place." It's not that obvious, and of course, people would get in trouble for that. They know that they would be called out for that because it's obvious that they're discriminating against you for one reason or the other. It's more about choices. So let's say there are two contractors trying to get a project, and all things created equal, that they have the same qualifications, the same background, same education, same skill set, equipment, what have you. If you are, so this is the tricky part. So it's not necessarily that somebody's going to look at you and say, well, I'm going to give it to this person because they're white. It's more like they're probably already in, or so this is a white person that's giving out the contract. So they're probably in a relationship with that other white person because they might socialize in the same areas. They might go to the same clubs, network in the same places, and have similar interests. So because there's that relationship already, and they already know that person, trust that person, have built something with that person, they will most likely get the contract. Whereas the person of color, because they're not in that same environment, that same arena, it's less likely to get the contract because those opportunities to network weren't there or didn't present themselves. Not for lack of trying, but because, let's say in a conversation, you might think, well, I don't know if I really have anything in common with her. So it
Mhm.
might not be your first choice to go over and network with this person. So that's what I mean. There's kind of an undercurrent that it's never ever, well, boom. It's kind of like airy fairy. It's kind of in the background, and then the
Yeah.
result is
That's an unconscious bias that we all have, correct?
exactly.
And so if we're not aware of that and we're consumed by the system
Yes.
that in a way perpetuates unconscious bias, even though there's a lot of training around it, is still
Hmm.
so deeply seeped that
Yeah.
it's it takes a lot of work for us all to be aware of it. Would you say that's correct, Kara?
You know what? I think at our current state of consciousness, yes, it may seem like a lot of work, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So I think what people need to do is question things, and we're not trained to really question things and understand why things are the way they are. But if you look at, you can compare it to a lot of things. So let's say feminism, for instance, or just being a woman, right? Because when I was growing up, there were a lot of male gynecologists, a lot of male gynecologists. I seeked out a woman because I figured, well, she's got the same kind of mechanism, so she's going to know how to deal with me. Because the men that I went to, they were very rough and it was very uncomfortable. So when you hear like a man explain something about birth or something about labor, it's kind of a disconnect because it's like, well, how do you know? How could you possibly know? It doesn't matter how many books you read, how many PhDs you have. How can you know? You'll never ever be in that position to actually give birth or feel labor pain. So you're speaking from an intellectual capacity, but not from an authentic capacity. So it's similar with race and with people of color. You can empathize to a certain extent, um, but not in every way because you're just not in that body, right? You can't explain it from that deep place that you would need to actually feel it. So I mean, if you look at it that way, it's not that complicated because each one of us, whether you're a woman, whether you're a vegan, whether you're tall or short, there's always something physical about you that people can point at you especially children, right? They'll pick anything. Oh, you've got long. My son, I have an older son. He has really long eyelashes. I used to bug him about his eyelashes, and like, women would kill for this, but children, they just find anything, right? So if you look at it that way, anything physical that people can point out and kind of tease you about it, they will. It's the stuff underneath that's
Yeah.
harder, right?
Yeah.
That's usually the stuff that makes the big difference, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't see it. It's kind of like being in an abusive situation, right? You can see the marks; those are easy. So somebody can say, "Yes, you were hurt because I can see a bruise," but they don't know about the physical abuse, the financial abuse, the mental abuse, right? And
Mm.
that's the stuff that stays with you all the time. So if people can kind of look at it from their own kind of corner in the world or their own perspective of what it is about them that's physical, what's visible, and what's not visible. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard to understand where people of color are coming from with this topic. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a big stretch for people to kind of empathize because we all have something. Where it becomes challenging is how the media frames it, right? They want people to think that you're different than me. It's us against them. There's always this combat, right? There's always some kind of conflict, and that's deliberate. This system that is the deliberate part of this system. They want people to fight. They want people to have differences. They don't want people to come together, because if we come together, not to and kind of see where we have a common ground, which is, we all want safety for our children. We want,
Mm-hmm.
security. We all want to be fed. We want to be comfortable in our lives, right? Everybody wants that, right? But if you look at all of these other things that kind of takes away from that or makes it difficult for you to get to that place of comfort, it's all of these other things, all of these differences. And so they play on those constantly,
Mm-hmm.
men against women, rich against poor, Catholics, Muslims. It's infinite. It's infinite, and it can go right down to the microbe. That is how infinite it is. And so it just seems perpetual.
Even how there's not a divisiveness, but how the media actually uh, uses COVID as another way
Yes,
of making us different,
exactly.
hoping that we will empathize. But your point, as I see it, is that it's just another way that the system pulls us apart, makes us different from one another,
Exactly.
and puts pressure on each other to try to understand or to empathize. It's not a natural thing for us to do when
Mhm.
when we're being pulled apart all the time to compare with one another.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because then you really focus on my needs. Well, this is what I need. This is, how you're wronging me. And you don't kind of see the bigger picture of, well, yes, you might be wrong, but there's something even bigger than this. The environment is falling apart. Our social structures are falling apart. There's even bigger things to worry about. Like with the COVID, it's the people that are wearing masks and the people that don't wear masks. That's the that's the new
yeah,
combat ground, right?
yeah,
Has
yeah,
nothing to do with color, but people are going physically after each other. If some wearing masks and some not wearing masks, they're physically going after each other and not forgetting the bigger picture in the background of whether you wear a mask or not. This is a serious situation, and you
mm,
know people have to find there are other things going on besides that you have to kind of deal with. So
mm,
um, that's the mechanism that we kind of have to break down. That is the machine that we have to dismantle and really understand that their goal is to stop people from talking. Not to say that we can dismiss some of the wrongs that were done and the atrocities. We don't want to do that because that's denying that reality
yes,
exists. Right? I'm
yes,
not trying to do that. That's not the point. The point is that even together we can still discuss that and find a way to resolve that and to acknowledge it and to put it in a place of healing, right?
yeah,
Instead of dismissing it and saying, well, I'm not going to listen to you because you said this or because you wore a mask, so I can't even listen to anything you're saying right now because you're a Catholic or you're a Muslim, or,
Mm-hmm.
that dialogue never happens. It aborts before it even gets going, right? Because there are all these differences going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this destroying of parts of history, it's a disservice, because it's almost to the point of denying what has brought us here.
Yeah.
And it's not about that. We need to recognize that we haven't done well in the past, and it has to be reminders in an appropriate way, so that we can do better, or give us ways of doing better, right? Rather than just sweeping that underneath the rug as though it never happened. And
So that's the other part of it. I think right now, there's people are getting their backs up because it's a defense, right? So it's the two sides right now are, okay, right, you need to recognize that these things were done to Black people in the past, to Indigenous people in the past, to other Muslims in the past. Well, currently, right? That's a current situation as well. And then the other side of it is, well, yeah, but that's my ancestors. I didn't actually do that. I've never done this personally. I have friends in this, and I'm married to this person, and my kids are. And so that's kind of the two sides right now, right? The bigger picture to that, though, if you kind of dismiss the two sides, and these differences is, at the foundation of that, we want the acknowledgement needs to be there.
Yes.
And the healing needs to be there.
Yes.
Without blaming. And the reason we're blaming people is because of this machine, this system, right? It's made to blame. It's made to put, there's a win-lose, always. There's always a win-lose. A have and a have not. Somebody's higher, somebody's lower. And so you can't have a discussion in that type of environment.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go beyond that. And yes, acknowledge that something was done. And even though it was your ancestors, yes, the reason you're benefiting, the reason you're living this life that you're living now, which is a life of privilege, is because of the ancestors. The reason certain people of color, Black people, are living in certain situations, not everyone, is because of the past, is because of a historical past. Not only slavery, but I think people don't realize of what Africa was in the past. It was not the way we currently see it, but that's the narrative that we continuously get. It was very rich, very organized, very, a lot of the trade, a lot of the systems that we see now, not capitalism necessarily, but, this trading of goods that was happening on the African continent, because Africa is just rich with resources. There's some of the things that we have today, like cell phones, would not exist without places like the Congo and Central Africa. It just would not exist, because those components in your phone only come from Africa. And so again, it's just how the media, how the machine wants to frame this, right? And to get people to think, well, no, those people don't really know anything. They haven't contributed to history. They've only been slaves and whatnot. And then you've got the other side saying, well, yeah, well, we worked harder, we tried harder. Yes, you did, but there was a platform there that you were able to launch from. 400 years of it, 600 years of a platform that you're, and so all that needs to be acknowledged, right? And then the dialogue can happen and the healing can happen.
Yeah. So the system actually was working so well to be able to have exploitation as part of it. That would build the system even more to where we come today, right? It's contributed to the system. And exploitation of people, of the natural resources, and we continue to do it. And because it's part of the system as an individual, even though we're part of that system, there's a lot that we're just not aware of, right? And that's no excuse. But I think what's topical about today is that there is being more awareness, or more more talk about being aware
Mm-hmm.
of what part we play in this. Okay.
Yeah.
What part do we play in this? With our audience being business women,
Yeah.
and the topic being racism, what wisdom would you like to share with our audience today?
Wisdom. Yeah, I think so. You mentioned that we're not aware. I think what people really need to understand is that that's deliberate. There's a reason why you're not aware. There's a reason why I'm not aware. You're not aware of the true history of, what really happened even 100 years ago. That's all been obscured now, and what's not obscured has just been lied, covered over with
Yeah,
lies
yeah,
and misinformation, right? And then people like myself, Africans in the diaspora, are not aware of our past. Some are, some aren't. And those books have been burnt. They've been destroyed. The temples have been destroyed. History's been destroyed. I don't think a lot of people know that, there were universities in Africa tens of thousands of years ago, and that's where a lot of the Greek and Roman philosophies come from. But that information has been destroyed. So it looks like it started in Rome. It started in Greece. It started,
yes,
in Europe, and that's not really accurate. And that's not to say uh, anything to harp on necessarily, but just that people need to be aware that the information that we're getting is not accurate. It's not truthful. It's very misleading, and that is deliberate. There's a reason why they need to keep that going, because if we ever got together and talked without blaming or without pointing fingers or without, the anger that's behind that, so many amazing things could happen to people with this world, but you make money off of pollution, you make money off of environmental harm, you make money off of commercialism and consumerism. You know, I, for me, the good, one of the things I know is that you've got conventional fruits. Just take fruits, something really light. So you've got conventional fruits, you've got organic fruits. They look identical. I bought some lime the other day that was supposed to be organic, and there was a regular lime and it still had the tag on it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this grocer, either this happened in your warehouse or this happened in the store somewhere, right? It had to happen at some point before it got to my house. And I'm thinking, okay, so one solution would be to just seal the bag, right? So nobody can switch them out. The other solution would be to make them look absolutely different, so you cannot make that mistake. But people profit from that confusion. People profit from that obscurity, right? And I think for yes, we all, business is about making money. But it's not very helpful when it's just a very small percentage of people making money, and they're doing it by exploiting the other 99% of us. Nobody benefits from that, especially when there are alternatives that could be much better for everyone, right? But it's not profitable. It's not profitable for this particular sector.
mm-hmm.
And the other bigger part of that is that they lose control. So I think that's what I want people to understand, is that this is about control, it's about division, it's about money.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all getting caught in that net. We're all getting caught in the deception and the ruse of it all, kind of the fakeness of it all. And if we could all just kind of see that clearly, that, this isn't about you and me, Patricia duking it out because you're a white woman and I'm a black woman. It's not it. It's about the bigger picture. It's about the people that's making that happen, and they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kara. What major insight have you had in the past year regarding this topic of racism?
Last year, I mean, it's been like the last 6 months since the COVID. I think COVID really brought it to the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it's so much around racism, just the way the world works. And that is that we really need to connect the dots, and that this is a huge jigsaw puzzle. And even if one piece of that puzzle is missing, the other 99 pieces still work, right? The other 99% still work. So you might be able to solve one part of the puzzle. So let's say people think that the police are the problem. So, okay, so we defund the police. But what you're not seeing is that the education system is the problem. The medical system is the problem. The banking system is the problem. And so there are all these other different pieces working that even if you take off one, there are 99 other things, there are 1,000 other things that are going on in the background. And so it looks like nothing is being accomplished, like we're not getting anywhere. And then the people that tried can say, well, we tried, we did our part. So, it's on you guys now, you need to do something because we've done what we can.
Try to fix this part. Now
Yes.
there's all these other things that have to be fixed, and we're not the ones to fix them.
That's it. That's it. Nobody is, right? Because even if you, it's like a car. You drive. If you have a car and it stops on the road and you think, the engine's gone, when it's really the tires, right? The tires are the problem, right? You're fixing the wrong thing, and so everybody kind of throws their hands up in frustration and says, I've tried, you've tried, this can't be fixed. It can be fixed, and it's not difficult to fix. We just have to see all of the moving parts.
Yeah.
And people aren't seeing that because they're being hidden. They're deliberately being hidden for another purpose, for a few people that can benefit from that.
Yeah. Now we've really seen how social media has brought all these things to the surface. What's your opinion on the effect of social media on whether it's going to help or whether it hinders?
For sure it's helped. I mean, because if people didn't have phone videos, it would be, your word against theirs, because people have been saying this for years. Like I was in Calgary, this was probably almost 30 years ago, and a group of high school kids, predominantly Black kids, were meeting at one of the train stations. And because there was a large group of them, it became a problem. So the police were called in. I think there might have been some confrontation or something, not between them, but all of the schools kind of gathered at this train station after high school. And the police were called, and there were two cars that drove directly into the group of high school students. And there was a 6-foot wire fence. And the only way they could escape the car was to jump over, scale this 6-foot wire fence. That was 30 years ago. Those were high school kids. This is in Calgary. That was very homogenous at the time. And it eerily sounds very similar to something that happened last week, right? So people are thinking, no, this is new. No, it's not. This has been going on for a very long time. But because now we've got footage, and it's not just somebody saying, well, this happened to me, I was stopped, for no reason, or, I went to a store and I was searched, or they called me. Those were just words, but now there's actual footage. There's, and people believe anything they see on TV or social media. So that's kind of the downside, and that people that want to play out this narrative of, good versus evil, Black, white, Christian, Muslim, that's also their platform, right? So people really have to be vigilant and really kind of connect the dots and say, well, okay, this is what you're saying now, but the broadcast you had last week said something different, or you're not being consistent with your words and your actions, or your words are saying this, but what you're doing is actually showing me this. So I think people just really need to open their eyes and really see what actually happened and not what they're being told, because there are people that are benefiting from, telling you nonsense or misleading you or straight up just lying to your face. Mm-hmm. Somebody's benefiting from that.
Yeah.
So, and it's been good, and it's been I would say mostly good. But just be aware that there's other things out there that can kind of throw you off course.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much, Kara. This has been a very interesting conversation. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are watching and would like to follow Kara on her social media, There will be links below and a connection with Akara as well. And we expect any kind of response to be respectful, because we are all trying to work as best as we can to make sure that we improve the situation rather than it inflaming a situation. So I want to thank you very much for being open with your insight and with your focus at the moment. And you know that I would do anything to help you with this. Just call on me.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Patricia.